Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get us started in interest of everyone's time. And I will let my colleague Frank let in other people if they are joining from here on out. Welcome. My name is Susan Crabiel. On behalf of the Presbytery of Baltimore, I welcome you to this evening's orientation with our special guest speaker from Lutheran Social Services, the National Capital Area, Eva Ng'ongolo-Simon. And before we start the program, I do want to just note we are recording today's session so we can share it with those who are unable to attend tonight. And that will be available through the Presbytery website and YouTube channel afterwards. You are all muted right now. When we get to the Q&A time, we'll certainly be able to unmute you to ask your questions. If we end up with more than I can see on one page, I may have to ask you to use the raise hand function so I can see that you have a question to ask, but you're also welcome to type questions into chat. So before we begin the program presentation, let's take a moment for prayer. The prayer I'm using this evening is revised from a prayer we wrote some colleagues of mine at PDA with me last fall. So let us pray. Oh God, our creator and sustainer, we come to you as the one who created all things and declared them good. We are gathered here tonight to learn how we can be a healing force in this world. We pray for the people of Afghanistan, those who've been evacuated, those left behind, and those who are fleeing to other countries in search of protection. We have heard the cries of the suffering. We have seen the pain and anguish of those whose lives have been ripped apart by the violence and the ensuing chaos. We lament our own failures as a nation to bring out the peace and stability that had been promised and longed for. And we lament for the lives lost and hopes shattered. Lead the people of Afghanistan to safe haven. Give them the strength and hope to begin again. Give us the grace to walk alongside them. Help us, God of justice and mercy, to turn our anguish into deeds of love and welcome. Help us not to turn away, nor to forget. Be with us now as we learn about the enormous efforts underway to evacuate, resettle, and accompany Afghan friends and allies. Open our hearts, our doors, our communities, our churches and neighborhoods to receive, to honor, and to bless. O Holy One, again, we ask that you open our ears and our hearts, that we may be open to your call for us in this moment and in this place. Amen. So it is my pleasure to welcome Eva Ng'ongolo-Simon. She is the new volunteer coordinator at LSS National Capital Area here in the Baltimore area, their brand new office that they have opened in the Arbutus area. Eva is new to the Baltimore area, but she is not new to refugee resettlement, and she comes to us most recently from Connecticut. So Eva, I invite you to unmute and to share your presentation with us. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's orientation. My name is Eva Simon, and I'm the newly hired Volunteer Services Coordinator at Lutheran Social Services. I thank you, Susan, for the introduction. I do come from Connecticut, and in Connecticut, I worked for another refugee resettlement agency where I managed the family mentoring program. I find my career to be very rewarding. I get to work with people like you who want to help others. So thank you again, and thank you for having me tonight. Lutheran Social Services of the National Capital Area, our mission statement is we walk with those in need and mobilize community partners to provide services that offer hope and rebuild lives. We've been serving the Washington, D.C. metro community since 1917. Our current programs include youth development and wellness, refugee and immigrant services, family and children services, trafficking victim assistance program, care for newcomers. Refugee and immigrant services. It's a continuum of services for refugee clients and families focused on welcoming, self-sufficiency, and integration. Reception and placement for up to 90 days, employment programs for up to 5 years. We provide case management to address self-sufficiency and barriers, connections to community resources, immigration and citizenship services. In Maryland, we have the reception and placement program. We have programs like Matching Grant, Refugee Support Services, Refugee Transitional Cash Assistance, Refugee Youth Mentoring Program, Preferred Communities, Extended Case Management Programs, Refugee Care Coordination, Certification Program for English Learners. The heartbeat of an agency like Lutheran Social Services in our reception and placement program is client self-sufficiency and integration. We want to help our clients obtain early employment, learn new systems, feel a sense of belonging in their community, improve their English language skills, and we involve community partners and volunteers such as yourself. I will talk more about the different groups of clients that we help. First, let's define who is a refugee. A refugee is someone who is outside of his or her country of nationality or habitual resident, has a well-founded fear of persecution because of his or her race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, is unable or unwilling to avail himself or herself of the protection of that country or to return there for fear of persecution. Who is an asylee? An asylee is someone who meets the definition of a refugee and is already present in the US or seeking admission at a port of entry. Once in the United States or at the land or border port of entry, applies for and receives asylum due to a well-founded fear of persecution because of his or her race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, and is someone who's unable or unwilling to avail himself or herself of the protection of that country or to return there for fear of persecution. Who is a special immigrant visa holder? A special immigrant visa holder, or SIV, has served the US military forces as translators, interpreters, engineers, security guards, embassy clerk, logisticians, cultural advisors, and soldiers. The Special Immigrant Visa Program represents a promise we made to our allies and supporters overseas. The US Refugee Resettlement Program is a humanitarian program established by Congress. The legislative basis is the US Immigration and Naturalization Act and the Refugee Act of 1980. The goal is to assist refugees and other eligible populations to attain durable economic self-sufficiency as soon as possible and to successfully integrate into the communities where they are resettled. Congress appropriates funding to the Department of State, Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration, and the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement. Every year, immigration law requires that the executive branch officials review the refugee situation or emergency refugee situation, project the extent of possible participation of the United States in resettling refugees, discuss the reasons for believing that the proposed admission of refugees is justified by humanitarian concerns, grave humanitarian concerns, or is otherwise in the national interest. Following consultations or these discussions with Cabinet, representatives, and Congress, a determination is drafted for signature by the President. The presidential determination establishes the overall admission levels and regional allocations of all refugees for the upcoming fiscal year. No refugees may be admitted in the new fiscal year until the presidential determination has been signed. U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program is an interagency effort involving several government and non-government partners overseas and in the U.S. I will email this PowerPoint slide to the organizers of this meeting so that you can have it for your review as well. The U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, again, is an interagency effort, and some of the agencies here listed are the Department of State, Population, Refugees and Migration, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, Resettlement Support Centers, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement, International Organization for Migration, and non-governmental organization. The security process. Refugees are the most vetted visitors or residents to enter the United States of America. They go through several security screening steps, including biometrical security, multiple background checks, security screenings, in-person interview, medical screenings, and border protection reviews. There are 9 national agencies that aid in the resettlement of refugees and those with special immigrant visas into the United States: Church World Services, Ethiopian Community Development Council, Episcopal Migration Ministries, HIAS, International Rescue Committee, U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, U.S. Conference for Catholic Bishops, World Relief, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, LIRS. The U.S. Pathway to Resettlement. The U.S. government works with the UN to select and vet refugees for third country resettlement. The U.S. government passes accepted cases to the 9 National Voluntary Resettlement Agency, VOLAGs, that we reviewed. The VOLAGs then match cases to local affiliates who do the actual resettlement work, such as the Lutheran Social Services of North Capital Area. Pre-arrival, the case is selected and vetted for resettlement. The case is matched with a local office. The case is then assured. In this case, our agency receives information of our family demographics, and then we wait for further instructions, which is when the case is scheduled to travel or arrive. At that time, the case manager prepares for the case's arrival. We start preparing for housing setup, airport pickups, meals and grocery, and health accommodations if needed. And on arrival day, the case is enrolled into the reception and placement program if eligible. The RMP case manager works with the clients for 90 days. The case is referred to employment service programs such as matching grant and state-funded programs. The case is referred to other programs for ongoing support, other programs such as family and youth mentoring, etc. The reception and placement program provides reception services to arriving refugees or those with special immigrant visas during their first 90 days in the US. The State Department allocates a maximum of $1,225 per refugee. So for a family of 4, that amount will be multiplied by 4 for each member. RMP services include arrival day, making sure that we have a culturally appropriate hot meal for the family or individual, 1 week supply of food, apartment setup, airport pickup, home visits, intake interviews, health screenings, school enrollments for the children, applications to Social Security, food stamps, Medicaid, temporary cash assistance. We provide culture orientation, transportation orientation, and registration to ESL and employment services as well. For our clients, they're able to come back to us and receive assistance when it comes to job search and job development for up to 5 years. A few of the employers that have hired our clients include hotels, restaurants, large stores like Costco, transportation companies like Uber and Lyft. Some of our clients have limited English fluency and may be illiterate in their own language or lack work skills needed for the US labor market. Others may have advanced degrees and professional credentials from their home country and must obtain US credentials and certifications to resume their careers or to stay connected with their chosen occupations. Welcoming our Afghan allies. We will go over Lutheran Social Services, North Capital Area, response to Afghan allies, the community response, and our services, gaps, and needs. Since 1917, we have been involved to meet challenging needs of our community while staying true to our mission of fostering resilience and creating welcoming communities. Lutheran Social Services of North Capital Area is mobilizing its community supporters to be a part of this historic welcome of Afghan allies. We have resettled more than 4,000 special immigrant visa holders and Afghans with humanitarian parolee. We have been resettled by Lutheran Social Services North Capital Area since July. We've also resettled dozens of refugees since the Biden administration reopened the refugee resettlement pipeline this last month. With a small staff, leadership evaluated and updated purviews for the best coverage and access. We've assessed the greatest needs, and staff determined immediate greatest needs were housing, select in-kind donations, and financial gifts. We've educated the community. The community is continuously updated via social media and town halls. The first town hall on August 26th had more than 1,100 attendees. We have a town hall upcoming this 9th, and I will send that information to the organizers. You can also find more information on our website, Lutheran Social Services North Capital Area.org. Daily operations, continued services in case management through expedited processing with staff working overtime and eventually vetted administrative volunteers joining the ranks. Community response, we are humbled by the outpouring of generosity and support from community partners, congregation, businesses, individuals locally and across the country. Volunteers, several thousand people offered to donate their time and talents. More than 5,300 individuals submitted requests to assist via our online volunteer sign-up form before we closed it effectively to manage apartment setups. That website is now open. Again, when you go to our website and look for volunteer opportunities, it will link you directly to that application site. More than 800 groups and individuals volunteered to complete apartment setups and have collected household items. Congregations across the greater Washington area and the DMV reached out individually or formed networks to combine efforts for the greatest impact. This does not include individuals. Professional community, working with local legal, medical, and other professions to fill the gaps in meeting deadline for benefit and school enrollment, health checks, and employment. Service gaps. We aim to provide prompt and outstanding services to our Afghan allies. Despite our best efforts, we have been unable to utilize the full potential of our community and remain wanting regarding government support of Afghan allies on our behalf. In-kind donations. We keep the community up to date on changing highest priorities to meet the immediate and long-term needs of our Afghan allies. Welcome boxes. Boxes include home goods, toiletries, and furniture basics for every home. We have an Amazon wish list, which features highest priority items and is updated continuously. Our initial ask was sold out within 24 hours. Gift cards. Gift cards are crucial for covering daily needs like transportation, purchasing halal food, and culturally appropriate toiletries and clothing. Storage space. All offices are filled to capacity with donations, with overflow and donated church space throughout the DMV. Long-term storage solutions are needed to maintain donations. The Good Neighbor Partner Program is a co-sponsorship program. It has different levels. I will start from level 3. Level 3 involves a 3-month commitment where there is the welcome home aspect, where an organization, faith group, or community members plan multiple donation drives in their home or community or congregation, collect all furnishing and household supplies for a new arrival, and set up the apartment for the family's arrival. And that is a 3-month commitment. Level 2 is a 6-month commitment that involves the welcome home aspect of holding those donation drives and furnishing the full apartment for a family. An adjustment support period of mentorship, where you ensure that the family has transportation to and from appointments within the first 90 days, and you provide 3 additional core areas of support. There's a $250 administration fee. The level 1-year commitment has the welcome home aspect, where we assist in setting up a home and furnishing the full apartment. The adjustment support period of mentoring, where there's transportation assistance and additional 3 core areas. But there is rental assistance involved as well in level 1, where you ensure that the family can maintain housing by providing full rental assistance for 3 months and at least 6 months of partial assistance. There's a $500 administration fee. This is a document that I will share to your congregation or faith group, but it's a quick fact sheet of that aids in home setup. So it makes recommendations for the items needed. We have quick tips at the bottom. Try to stay small and light with furniture, as apartments tend to be on the smaller side. Mattresses, linens, and toiletries should be new. And we have all these other resources, but all this material will be shared to you. Priority needs donations include phones, SIM cards, laptops, gift cards for grocery and clothing purchase. For volunteers, a welcome team, ESL tutors, family and youth mentors, grocery and cultural meal deliveries. This is my contact information. Please feel free to email me. The next step for your congregation or faith group would be, to contact me and schedule an orientation or training for the members of your congregation who would like to participate in welcoming a refugee family or a special immigrant visa holder in this case. And as a group, you would decide what level of GMP you would like to commit to. A lot of partners form groups within their group. You have, let's say, retired teachers or educators who in that team will help if the family has school-age children, for example, if the family has mom who doesn't speak English, making sure she's enrolled in ESL, and also having tutorings. So groups have been able to organize themselves in order to assist us in as partners in resettling our families. So the next step would be to decide what level, which group members would want to participate in the orientation, which members will have access, direct contact to the family because they need background checks as well. In addition, when you feel you would be ready, because some groups need 1 to 2 weeks in order to get the word out that donations are needed and what kind of items. We have to start thinking about storage space, for example, the family size that your group would be able to sponsor. So families are anywhere from families of 4, 3 to 5, but we also have groups of 9, 10, because a lot of our families want to stay together. That it could be a family with mom, dad, 4 children, but there's an uncle or a brother-in-law who's 26, 24, and as a family, they want to be resettled together. So these will be the next steps, is to contact me so that we can assist you and onboard you so that you can welcome our Afghan allies in your community. I want to thank you for listening to me speak. I know 30 minutes of tuning in to someone talk in a slide. I hope I didn't, everything was clear. And this material again will be forwarded to you. Next, we will open the floor where we will ask questions, but I will leave those instructions to our facilitator. And now I will stop sharing the presentation.
Thanks, Eva. So she'll stop sharing so we can see you all a little better. A lot of information, as you can see, about what the program is with Lutheran Social Services. A great overview of how the Afghan allies fit into the larger resettlement efforts of the office. Eva, I'm going to take the privilege of just asking the first question. You said that next steps for churches is this orientation, and I believe you said that you typically meet with a congregational team 3 times. Is that right, in that initial orientation?
Yes, groups, I have to say I'm very impressed by how all the groups are very organized. I think due to the pandemic, we've all become experts on Zoom. So teams meet and then they discuss, okay, we want to sponsor a family of 6. We want to be able to furnish a 3-bedroom apartment, for example, and we will be ready to start February 20th. This is how groups communicate with me. Then I know, based on that timeline, that I need to schedule an orientation for the whole, the church members who want to, or faith groups that want to take part. So we choose a date. I'm very flexible. So evenings tend to work better because we have working families, or weekends. It's a 2-hour window where I go through a similar presentation like today, just an overview of special immigrant visa holders, how we are welcoming our Afghan allies. But I also talk more about family mentorship. And we spoke about services that we have to provide for those first 90 days and what core areas a group or a partner can help us with. So we go into a little bit more details in that training. So once that training is done, I normally receive an Excel sheet with the first names, last name, and email addresses of volunteers who will have direct contact with the family. So I send that request. It's a self-pay volunteer background. The normal background costs about, or general background, I should say, costs $20.25. The individual or volunteer will enter their own personal information. We as an agency just receive the information. We have your chart that you're cleared, and that's part of the process. We ask that the volunteers that will be driving the families also complete a DMV background check, which Sterling administers as well. Sterling Volunteers, that's the site we use. But yes, those will be the next steps. And then based on that date that you inform me that you are starting, we would pair you with a family. I did not mention, but there is a housing crisis shortage at the moment. So our families, after they arrive from the military base, they are in temporary housing first. Temporary housing is hotels, and these are those long-term stay hotels that normally have a kitchen that can accommodate families so that they can prepare their meals. Hotel stays can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. It would really depend on the market and the applications that are being processed. A lot of our challenges when it comes to housing include the fact that our families are arriving, they're not employed yet. They don't have a credit history yet. So we as an agency, we have our partnerships with some of our some landlords or property managers, but we also have received help from partner groups like yourself that have those networks, have those connections. Some have even gone above and beyond and co-signed on a lease so that a family can receive an apartment. So that is a challenge. But again, I'm sorry to go over to answer your question way beyond what you asked, but I think the information is crucial so that partners can understand where we are in the resettlement process.
Yeah, certainly. Unlike the overseas arrivals where you have a little more lead time, this has all been very quick, people moving into the military bases and then from the military bases to you. One of the questions we have is about your resettlement in the Baltimore area. And my understanding is your new office is near UMBC in the Catonsville, Arbutus area. Is that correct? And could you say anything about where you expect people would be living once they're here?
Yes, I want to, I'm sorry, I want to be able to know if, I don't see on any of my colleagues yet, but I want to let them know, to invite them if they would like to answer any of these questions as well with me or add on to it. I welcome them as well. But yes, I will share that information with our new offices, our address there. There was an article that was published in the Baltimore area, and we're grateful that even a few property managers or landlords have reached out to us. And we're hoping to start that resettlement process with our families coming to the Baltimore area. We also have families that have chosen to live in this area because they have a family member, what we call a US tie. So they did not want to live on this side of Hyattsville, Greenbelt, but rather in that side of town. I hope that this answers your questions, but please, I will put my contact information in the chat. And once I meet with your congregation to do your individual trainings, we can spend more time as well going through Baltimore specifically, because I will have a better update as to where we are now in resettling our Afghan allies in your area.
Thanks. And there was a question about the administrative fees that you mentioned in the 3-month and the 6-month. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, we have the 6-month, the level 2 has a $250 administration fee that's involved. And with the administration fee, when our case managers are working with the groups, we do need to provide what's called almost extended case management, because here we are as a refugee resettlement agency, we are helping the clients, but also we have to train, and we also have to accommodate the needs and questions and what comes with large groups being able to help our families. So it's an administrative fee that's set, but I can share with you once I submit all the material, the breakdown of where that administrative fee goes as far as supporting our nonprofit as you support our client.
Thanks, Eva. We're open for some more questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask, just raise your hand and we can unmute you, or feel free to type it into the chat. We have a question about cultural orientation for volunteers. Can you say a few words about that?
Yes, I did see that question. And yes, we do have cultural orientation for our volunteers. So that's a required core service that we provide to our newly arrived families. We go anywhere, training goes from anywhere to just American laws to if there's a medical emergency, how to call 911. So there's a very extensive culture orientation that happens to our newly arrived families. And of course, sometimes because of the language barriers, we do utilize, of course, interpretation, but because that everything is new and there's so much information given to our clients, sometimes the case managers, or depending on which program our clients are in, that's an ongoing education.
So that's education for the refugees, but what about for the volunteers? Can you say something about orientation to our churches or groups here in terms of their partnering with the refugees or with the Afghans?
Okay, let me understand the question. Will there be additional training when it comes to how volunteers can help our Afghan allies?
Right, will they get cultural orientation about Afghan culture, or about how to be good allies with them and support them?
Yes, of course. During that group presentation, individual group presentation, we do have something similar, cultural orientation. But when it comes to the culture of the family that you'll be helping, it'll be very specific to that family. So we do have what we call a meeting where we go, where we meet with the case manager that's been working with the family, so that she can tell us more, what region they're from, what language are they from, what's the family dynamics, how do you see, how does the case manager see the volunteer group assisting with the family? What kind of goals can you set with the family? So it'll be very specific to that family. But of course, as an agency, we have those resources. I'll be more than happy to share with you some links. I did mention we have a town hall coming up, so I would share that information as well, so that you can come to that town hall and hear more about our Afghan allies and we as an agency. But yes, we have that information that I enjoy reading through it as well, and I will share that with you.
One earlier question I missed earlier was whether any of the Afghans that are at the hotels near BWI, are those any of those from LSS, National Capital Area, or are those all with International Rescue Committee? Do you know?
I cannot confirm which agency they're from, which other agency they're from, but we haven't placed any clients yet in hotels in that area.
In that area. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then what about language for the Good Neighbor teams? Do we need to have somebody who speaks their language as part of our Good Neighbor team?
I have to say that no, it doesn't require you to know the language of the family that you're helping. Actually, the family needs you and your language skills in order to help them, the English language skills. As someone who migrated into the United States, I spoke English, my family spoke English, but we still needed a lot of help when it came to understanding the complex healthcare system of the United States, education, how to advocate for your children, testing, meeting with teachers. So the families need more of your English skills. But when it comes to how would you communicate with an English language learner or someone that doesn't speak English, I can go over some of those trainings at our individual group presentations. But there's various ways the current groups are managing that. One is some of our families have a family member. So when you arrive at the house, they will call that family member and have them interpret and help. I always test Google. Google Translator is getting better and better. I usually test it in my language, and I see that it has improved over the years. So Google Translate is a great tool. I will say there's a universal language of smiling and being that friendly face. It doesn't necessarily have to be you speaking the same language, but through actions, nonverbal communication, pictures. Let's say you are trying to communicate that you can be a resource in helping your family go grocery shopping every Saturday. So showing a picture of a market and that activity. And eventually, if you are someone that's working with an English language learner, you develop your own language in a sense where you'll find yourself being able to communicate with someone without using the same words or language, and it will become natural to you as well. So I encourage you to not worry about the lack of understanding of Pashto or any of the languages, and you don't need those languages in order to help your client. And we as an agency, we will make sure that in the beginning, especially, we make sure that we introduce you to the client in a way that we have English, we have staff members that speak languages of our clients. And if not, we can always utilize the language line in the beginning so that when we're introducing you and you're setting those goals and you're making those meetings with the client, that you're on the same page. So we won't just say, okay, we've cleared you for the background, we've trained you, here's your client, good luck. No, it's a partnership. As we said, it's a co-sponsorship. We're doing this together. So if you feel you are not understood, you would then email me and the case manager that information so that we can then reiterate to our client, whether with an interpreter on the other line or what have you. And I encourage you as volunteers and partners to utilize the language interpretation that's already out there. So for example, you're helping mom register children at the school. The public school system should be able to call an interpreter and help that mom register her children in school. Although you're there, you want to also help our client become self-sufficient and be able to do this for themselves. So encourage the school to be able to put that language interpreter on the line so that mom can be part of that conversation when you go to the bank to open an account for your mentee. The bank can put the language of your mentee so that they too can be part of that transaction. Healthcare, for example, if a client is receiving an appointment confirmation, they can put an interpreter on the phone so that the mentee can understand what's happening. Although you're there, you speak the language, we still want to be able to utilize the systems that are already available so that our clients can understand what's happening. And that does help with self-sufficiency.
Thanks, Eva. That is a great reminder that for a lot of our organizations and service providers in the community, they have access to language interpretation too. Laura Urban, I see your hand up. Would you like to go ahead?
Thanks. Yeah, actually, might be a question more for you, Susan, than for Eva, though. Thank you, Eva, for all this good information. I'm just wondering if you, Susan, might give us some more sort of high level picture on how we navigate the several options to assist Afghan allies, or I guess maybe IRC in Baltimore isn't quite doing the Good Neighbors program. So if we wanted to do the 3-month commitment as a congregation, we should go this route. Is that, if you could help us navigate where we are in the bigger landscape, that might be helpful.
Sure. Well, one of the reasons we wanted to offer this program tonight is because the LSS does have this program that is really designed for kind of that team approach of a congregational approach to supporting the Afghans. Some of you may have signed up yesterday for the Afghan Alliance. They are also really reaching out to try to create a network of networks across organizations. And they are also signing a memorandum of agreement with LSS to really break down some of those silos across different organizations. So, you know, if individuals want to volunteer, they can sign up directly on the websites of the different organizations and go through those individual ones. But really, as far as one kind of designed for a congregational team approach, I would say LSS is the organization, the area that has that model. And as Eva pointed out, there's the different levels of organizational support. Whether it's from the welcome team that's really at the very front end and you're really not doing a lot going forward, or whether or not you then are making a longer term commitment. I often talk to congregations about thinking about it as stages. So if you are making a longer term commitment to support what Eva was saying, you know, the goal is people not to rely on you. So we don't want to jump in and create a dependency model, but really to think about how you stage down over time. So it's, you know, that upfront commitment of being those first friends with somebody when they're brand new, when they need a lot of help with navigating, but then stepping down. And many churches I know officially may end their relationship with LSS after 6 months, but they might actually continue to provide some mentorship and support through the first year, for example. So I think one of the recommendations, and Eva, maybe you want to speak to this, but that question of kind of assessing your own church, where you're at. My other thing about that is that you know, your involvement can grow over time. So I don't think you have to have it all worked out. You know, sometimes you haven't worked out enough to know that you can make some initial commitment, and then things emerge from there that you are able to take advantage of. But I think that knowing your own congregation, the level of interest, the types of people that you have in the congregation and how they might partner.
Yes, and I wanted to add that initially you may have a congregation, they have 15 members, they've reached out to us, they want to do a level 2 commitment. The moment they start posting those donation needs on Facebook, and then eventually when they furnish the apartment and then they're working with the family, what tends to happen is the organization keeps expanding. More volunteers end up wanting to help the family. So then they send them my way, say, please orient and background check these other 10 volunteers that are joining our team. And when groups get very large, I have a group that's over 30 people, and they're in their 4th family because they're able now to say, okay, we've resettled this family and we have this enough volunteers. So let's now take on a new family. And again, it is a co-sponsorship program. So we will be here alongside with you as your group grows and more volunteers want to help.
Other questions? I see Eva's got her contact, and there's also now information in the chat about the upcoming event that she mentioned, the town hall. So that link is there. Other questions?
Can you estimate the time commitment that might be involved on a weekly basis? That's a very good question. It will really depend on the family size and need. Initially, because our families, for example, that are here in the closer to our Hyattsville Greenbelt area, our families here in temporary housing, we ask that the volunteers start at a small scale, meaning you send 2 or 3 representatives that will check in on the family, be a friendly face, see if they need anything from coats to, if they've been, are they getting out of the hotel, for example? Do they know where the library is? Do they need any help with going to the market on Saturdays? Before you introduce a schedule where multiple people will be visiting the family. And then it's a hybrid model because of COVID, as you know. So once the needs are assessed by those 2 or 3 volunteers, if there are 4 members of the family and they all need either school tutoring, GED help, or English language conversation, if the family has 1 or 2 laptops, volunteers can help the families get into a schedule with the volunteers, and you can meet via Zoom so that you can start helping families while they're still in the hotels. So the average volunteer hours will really depend on your group members and how you would like to be involved. But there's no maximum, there's no minimum. Well, we ask at least 2 hours a week. I would say that would be the minimum, but that wouldn't be true to say it will take you 2 hours a week to help a family, because let's say you're going to register for schools or you're going to the grocery store. Those activities alone are anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So initially, when you first start working with a family, there might be more hours, and then gradually the family, all the children are in school. They know where their bus route is. Mom and dad are in ESL. They are meeting with the job developers at our agencies. Everyone has had all the appointments done, so they don't need any more appointments. So initially, there might be where you're needed for more hours, but then gradually the hours will decrease. And as volunteers, you will assess those hours based on the family need.
Yes, and most teams organize according to those different areas that Eva's been mentioning. So you might have a team lead that's really looking at the educational needs of the family, and they in turn then help organize members of your congregation or group that are interested in education. And you have somebody else that's looking at the housing and the furnishings, and they're organizing the donations and the things around that. Somebody else that might be looking at the employment issues. So of course, the amount of time it takes any one person will depend on that. I will say that, people need a lot of orientation, and they have a lot of idle time when they first come, right? Before they get the jobs, before everybody's kind of got their routines going. So it can take as much time and energy as you're willing to give it. So one of the things we really advise groups to do is to take time to figure out, your own boundaries on that, and being able to manage that so that you're not overwhelmed. You're not there to be at their beck and call. You're there to be their partner. Yeah. We have another question about the donations for the families, whether everything needs to be new or can some things be used?
Yes, some items can be used. The rule of thumb is, I apologize, my alarm is going off. The rule of thumb is if you wouldn't use it, then don't donate it. So items can be used, wood items, for example, beds, things of that nature. But we do ask things like mattress and linens be new. And with families that are currently in the hotels, some groups have found it more rewarding to include the family in what kind of linens would they like, or what colors would they like to choose, or when it comes to the pantry, what items would you like for your own pantry, instead of having the volunteers do everything and say, welcome home. You include the family as well in that aspect of choosing items that will go into their home.
Yeah, that's one advantage I hadn't thought about them being in the hotels, is that you actually can consult with them before they get to you. That's not usually the case. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and the sizes, it helps to know sizes versus, because a lot of people will say, I have new items, I have new clothes, but you can't accept items if you don't know the person's size or preference, or so it helps the client because you are including them while you're helping them.
So I see we're almost at our hour. I'll just give one last shout out if there's any last minute questions somebody's thought of. I will say we're very fortunate in the Baltimore area that we do also have mosques in the area. And so that is also a possibility for being able to have people attend prayer services. Judy, I see you have a question. Oh.
Yeah. My question is, I had noticed that the Amazon wish list from Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services was for the Northern Virginia area. And I wondered whether you will be developing a new list for those families that we'll be working with in Maryland.
Yes, and I think there's a logistics way where even if they all end up in Virginia, they are distributed. But I can share updated information if there's, because we just moved into new spaces. So I think it was more of a storage matter where if the items are delivered at a large capacity, which of our offices will be able to house them. But I know that we're moving to our new offices. We have pods. We have congregations who know we're moving to Greenbelt now, and they've offered storage. We're actually going to be putting some of our winter coats in one of the churches. So yes, I will get that. I will note that and see if there's an update on donations directly to our Maryland location.
And would those donations be, we could put in requests that you could then put in an Amazon wish list for families we might be working with?
So when it comes to the welcome home aspect of a group that's resettling or aiding in resettlement, they do their own donation drives and buy their own items. The items that we receive for donations or we buy is if we are 100% responsible. We have no sponsor for that family for one reason or another. Sponsors are always, we're always onboarding sponsors, but if an apartment, becomes available now, we're not going to say, okay, let's keep waiting to find a sponsor. We at Lutheran Social Services have to furnish that apartment and resettle that family. So we utilize those donations to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of refugees do not get a sponsoring group to come alongside them. So then it really is completely on Lutheran Social Services to do the work and whatever individual volunteers they might get. Yeah. Well, folks, I see we have reached the hour. So I am going to thank Eva for spending part of her evening with us. Because you registered, we do have your emails, and so we will send you a follow-up email with the information that was shared tonight. On behalf of the Presbytery, I am definitely available with congregations if you have questions for your own congregation and about how to connect. And otherwise, I wish you all very well, and thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you as well.